So when that happened and they were rebuilding from basically zero, White Sox fans were super unhappy, right? Crazy unhappy. And, the whole trust the process and all that stuff. But this is a perfect example of that. That's really what they did. They put a lot of time and energy and money into their farm system and scouting. This team has very few big money free agents. It's a team that's built like a small market franchise in many ways. So they're not a small market franchise, really. But they think of themselves as one, or they play like one, or whatever term you want to use. They're built. That's what I should say. They're built like one. They're built like a small market franchise. They have a little bit of a sprinkling of free agent guys who got a decent amount of cash, but most of the guys are homegrown. They've kept some of their guys. They've signed some guys when they hit arbitration eligibility. So that's how we're different from some of those teams that are what we call a 4A franchise, right? Where when a guy gets ready to hit eligibility for arbitration, they have to move them, right? There's certain teams, and that's who the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Red Sox just sort of lay there like vultures waiting, right? That guy's about to be arbitration eligible, right? But this team held on to some of the guys that became arbitration eligible that they really liked, added a couple of mid-price free agents, but the rest of the team is guys that came up through the farm system. It's like watching when the Twins were good, right? The what do you call it? The Homer Dome Twins, right? There was one or two free agent guys and a bunch of guys who they brought up through the farm system. It's like that. That's how this team is constructed. They have a little bit of everything. They have a little bit of pop. They have a couple of actual power hitters, a couple of contact hitters, a couple of guys. People don't steal bases like they used to, but they have a couple of guys who can steal bases. They're a good defensive club. Their pitching is solid. Now, a lot of people were very wounded when Chris Sale left. Like, once again, calling for Kenny Williams' job, and we'll never get another pitcher. And we don't have another pitcher like Chris Sale, but we have a lot of good pitchers. There's no one single guy you say, oh man, that guy's a stud, he's amazing. But there's good pitching top to bottom, and this is what I want people to understand. Superstars are cool and everything, but you don't have to have superstars to win. There have been a long list of teams that have won, particularly in baseball. Baseball is different from, in basketball, you kind of do have to have a superstar to win, right? Even teams that were very much homegrown, like the Spurs, though those guys were homegrown superstars, they were still superstars. So the White Sox don't really have a guy you would say this guy is a how to put it this way, a person who's not a very serious baseball fan, or at least a reasonably serious baseball fan, is not going to recognize literally any single player on the White Sox, right? There's not a single guy on the entire team that if you're not a pretty serious baseball fan, you would recognize. There's no guys who are getting Subway commercials. There's no guys on this team that are going to pop up at a State Farm commercial or Pizza Hut or any of that. Not a one, right? The way the team is constructed is good players, particularly trying to build, like I said, around your farm system, add a couple of key free agents at positions where you're struggling to find guys in your farm system, and that's it, right? That's how they've done it. That's the recipe they've used. And the other teams that come to mind, of course, that do it somewhat similarly, though they're more pitching focused than this team, would be the Rays, right? Tampa Bay is built once again.
Well, we're going to talk about Tampa Bay next, so
right. But I'm just saying that's how this team is built similarly, but more focused on hitting than pitching. I would say a little more focused.
Of course, I'm a Yankee fan, but I really think that Tampa Bay is the cream of.
In terms of just how you run an organization, yes.
And when you look at you talk about someone that has actually been able to mix, that mixture of veterans along with the superstars, and even losing a couple of superstars along the way of their own.
Well, I mean, they can't really hold on to superstars. They have a fairly tight budget in Tampa Bay, so they can afford to keep usually one or two guys that become arbitration eligible. The rest of them they have to move, and they do a great job of getting back. They evaluate talent really well, obviously, when they get back prospects that pan out. I mean, it's that simple. The guys that come back to them in these trades turn out to be really, 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 really good, James. They are great at this. I don't think there's anybody better at evaluating pitching in baseball. I mean, the Braves, of course, are really good at it. There's a few teams that really understand it, but nobody's better, in my mind, than the Rays.
Yeah. Are you thinking that may be the matchup, the Rays against the White Sox?
It certainly could be. That would be a fascinating matchup. I worry about the Sox pitching is solid, but I do worry about how they match up with that particular pitching staff. It'll be interesting. That's what it'll be. It'll be a truly an interesting matchup because it'll be some strength on strength and some strength on weakness, right? What I hope, right? When I think about the things that make the White Sox go, they're a team that does a pretty good job of like old school baseball stuff, like getting guys remember when guys used to get moved over, right? You'd take two pitches and hit to right or lay down a sacrifice bunt. Remember those days, James? But they can still do that. This is a team that actually understands how to do those things that people did in the 60s, 70s, and even into the 80s. Other things I like about this team. I mean, Carlos Rodon is a really solid pitcher, but he doesn't have overpowering stuff. He throws in the low 90s. There's nothing sexy about him. There's no sizzle. But he manages to get it done, right? Lucas Giolito is the star, the stud. And if he can stay healthy, which has been at times a struggle in his career, he's a guy you can really trust. I mean, he has a 2.71 ERA. He's in the second half of the series, in the second half of the season, I should say. He tends to be around the plate, but stays away from the heart of the plate. In the second half of the season, he's only given up 9 home runs. He's solid across the board, but he's better than solid. He's on a really good staff. He's probably a number 2 or maybe a number 3 on like a Dodgers staff or something. But he's a really good pitcher. Lance Lynn is that veteran presence. He's one of the few, we talk about free agents or whatever. He's one of the few guys that, they actually paid money for free agents. He's one of a couple. But he's solid. Dylan Cease is a guy who I think is just beginning to realize what he can be as a pitcher. He missed some time this year with a minor injury. He took a line drive off the right triceps. My problem is he comes up small against good teams, right? He's good. He's really good against bad teams. But against teams that are above 500, his ERA is 6.04. I don't like that. But he's young and he's coming along. I'm hoping he'll grow into being that number 4 or 5 guy in the rotation. And like I said, Rodon is a guy that they give him a lot of rest. He throws in the low 90s. He's got a pretty decent slider. Since August, 5 wins, a 1.93 ERA. Now, it should be mentioned, he also hasn't made it past the 5th inning in any of them. So that's the thing about him is he really works. He puts a lot of load on your bullpen. But they have a good bullpen, right? Kopech is quietly, in my mind, a top 5 bullpen arm in all of baseball. So they've got – it's not one of those stupid loaded bullpens like the Yankees of a few years ago or something like that where they have 3 guys who could close for almost any other team and, just crazy low whips amongst their setup guys. They don't have that. They have that's what I worry about. I worry about if it's a pitcher's duel kind of series against the Rays just simply have more pitching. That's the only thing that worries me.
Well, you made a perfect segue into the next question, of course. When you talk about, I don't know whether, you call this I'm not really sure what category to put this under, but as we know, the Brewers made the playoffs.
Yep.
And here's, once again, you talk about a team that has a fairly deep bullpen. So I'm not really sure that on paper the loss really accounts for that much. But here you have a relief pitcher knowing that your team has made the playoffs and you break your hand on something stupid.
Yes. Correct.
Now, I mean, this wasn't even a fight. He punches a
No.
wall.
Yes.
He punches a wall. Like, I
Right.
mean,
Right.
like walls give in.
Right.
Like this is a
This
heavy
particular
bag.
wall may not have been one of the walls he was used to that apparently are made of balsa wood or paper
Yeah,
mache,
yeah,
whipped cream.
yeah,
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
yeah. I mean,
I'm
so
always
at some point, I mean, if you miss duty, well, once again, I guess it's kind of I didn't make military,
right. I know what you're saying.
but yeah, I mean,
Right, I get it.
should there?
It's an unforced error, James. Yes.
Yeah,
It's
right. So I mean, so should there be some type of disciplinary? I mean,
oh well,
bad
I
enough.
promise you. Oh,
I'm sure
I
he's gonna miss
promise you, the
those
kangaroo
playoff
court.
checks.
Oh, the kangaroo court's already been in his pockets, James. I promise you that. Um, that's one thing that hasn't gone away, though I don't know if it has as much power as it used to. Are you familiar with the kangaroo court?
Oh, of course. I mean,
Okay, I figured. So I promise you that they've had several cases of beer at his expense, James. I promise you.
he says several cases of it.
Several. Yes, I meant several. When you break your hand right as we're entering the playoffs, yes, and he deserves. I don't whatever it is they hit him with, he deserves every bit of it.
Yeah, I mean, talk about stupidity. Anyway, the Cards, their winning streak ends at 17. What do you think? Uh, I know it's good, to get onto that streak going into the playoffs, but how hard is it to pick that that one loss and put it behind you? Or does that become another streak?
Well, I mean, the Cardinals are always dangerous when they get in the playoffs. I mean, that's not exactly going out on a limb to say. Nobody likes seeing the Cardinals coming in the playoffs. There's just something about them in the playoffs. They're tough out for. I mean, I don't remember the Gas House gang, James, but I remember, I don't remember the days of red Shane Heats, but I do remember those Whitey Herzog teams, right? I do remember those teams in the 70s, and I remember the teams with Lou Brock, and I remember, so I remember them from about 72 or so onward. And of course, in the early 70s, they had to look up at the big Red Machine Reds. But once the Reds, basically broke up in the early 80s, that opened up, the room for them to start being a consistent contender for about 6-7 years in a row, it seems like. From about 82 through about 90, it seems like they were a contender in the NL practically every season, battling out with the Dodgers and others. So, and then they went to a little bit of and obviously La Russa went on that crazy run he had with them, and now I think it's Mike Matheny, if memory serves me correctly, there, and he's a really I'll give them this. They know how to scout managers. I mean, they've had. I mean, La Russa's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. If Whitey's not in, he should get in. And I mean, Matheny is actually a very young manager, but if he keeps on this path that he's on, he'll probably find his way in. They really get it. They get that. They get that managers do matter. And once again, they always have pitching, and they usually have the classic timely hitting. They don't have any true, oh my God, boppers. Those guys that hit the tape measure, right. They don't have that guy. The guy, they don't have a Barry Bonds. They don't have a Shohei Ohtani. They don't have a Tatis or a what's his name, Junior. but Vlad. They don't have a Vlad Guerrero Jr. They don't have those guys. The tape measure shot guy but they get the right hit at the right time. And yeah, they have some pop. Like, don't get me wrong, they're not a slap hitter team, but I'm saying they're not all over Sports Center the way a guy like Giancarlo and Aaron Judge is, where they hit the ball, 580 feet. But you don't need to. It counts the same amount if you hit it 327 feet in the right spot, right? And that's the way that team is built. It's a smart baseball team. I know it sounds like a cliche, but as long as I've been alive, I remember that being a smart baseball team. I don't know what your memory of the Cardinals is, but they're one of those teams that tends to throw the ball to the right base, knows when to take the extra base, knows. I mean, there's one team that plays the game. I mean, once again, it's one of those classic baseball cliches, but I'm going to stick with it because it's true.
Fundamentals.
They play the game the right way, all that stuff. Yes. And is it exciting? Do kids, get excited about it? Maybe not, but it wins. It wins you games.
Yeah, it truly does. But now you talk about perennials. Out here on the West Coast, 2 games separate the Dodgers and the Giants.
Yep.
The Giants.
One of the great classic rivalries of ever, right? Yeah.
And the only 2 teams, and I don't know if it's happened before in a particular division, but 2 teams winning 100+ baseball games.
Yep.
The Giants win 104, and as I say, 2 losses. The Dodgers won 102.
Yep.
I guess you could tell from the question that Tombstone was one of my favorite cowboy movies. Who's your Huckleberry here?
Yeah.
The Giants or the Dodgers?
So I love the Giants story, right? A team that a lot of people sort of left for dead because of the craptastic season they had last year, but that was the outlier. I knew this team would bounce back. I think they bounced back to the tune of 104 wins with the chance to, win a couple more. No, I'm not going to lie and say that, but I knew they wouldn't continue to be bad. Like, I knew this team would be good. That's the way the team is constructed and built. I knew they'd be good.
Pitching. Talk about pitching.
Right, exactly. I mean, they've got pitching. They've got, Buster Posey isn't quite what he was in his prime, but he's still a guy that comes through, very often with what you need when you need it. They're another team that defense doesn't get talked about in my mind nearly enough, but they're a really good defensive club. As much as I like them, then I look at all the crazy talent that they have in Los Angeles. They're like the equivalent of Alabama in college football.
But they don't have that big ballpark. That's the one thing. San Francisco, you have to hit the ball out of the ball. It's not a hitter-friendly ballpark.
Nope. And they're smart to be. When so many places are switching, right, shrinking their parks or sometimes even changing the configurations of the wind comes in. It's so much easier nowadays. People said it as a ball juice. I said, no, the parks are juiced. When my dad was watching baseball, there were parks where you'd hit the ball 427 to deep center, and all that, did was give, somebody.
Willie Mays would run it down.
Right. All you were doing is getting Mantle or Mays or Duke Snyder or whoever, somebody had a chance to make a great play. The Polo Grounds was what, 464 or something crazy to do. There are no ballparks like that anymore. I think the deepest now is like 420 or maybe, and that's the outlier. Like, most parks nowadays are 408, 400 to deep center, right? 408, 405, 400, 400, right? That's crazy. The parks are
388 to right field.
Right. You don't have to be Ted Kluszewski nowadays to hit the ball out, right? You could. That's why, and it ruins some guys, right? I think, is it D. Gordon, one of the Gordon brothers? I think ruined. He had 1 year where he hit like 20 something home runs and it ruined him because he started thinking he was a home run hitter. It's like, no, son, you're super fast. You might be the fastest man in baseball. Slap the ball on the ground and run. What are you doing? So back to the Giants. The Giants are a very scary team, but it's as much as I'd love to see them win. I just feel like there's just so much. I mean, the Dodgers roster looks like an all-star team roster. It's just stupidly thick with talent. But as you pointed out, if you're a team that's built, but they have guys who can do more than just bop. I mean, they have guys who can, hit those ringing doubles in the gaps, right? That the Dodgers are capable of doing that too. As much as I'd like to pick the Giants, I just can't pick against the Dodgers with how stacked that team is.
Hey, okay, well, it should be interesting. You think Magic wins more trophies as a Dodger owner than he does as an NBA player?
The only reason I'm going to say yes is because you can be an owner when you're 90. Right? I mean, Magic bought into the team 4 years ago. I'm trying to remember what year it was. And he would have been somewhere around 52 or 51 or whatever. So if Magic lives to be 80, he can be a partial owner of the team for about 26, 27 years, James. A lot can happen in 26, 27 years.
No, it's just interesting. We always think of Magic as that basketball player, but pretty shrewd businessman too.
Oh, extremely shrewd businessman. There's about 3 or 4 different businesses that he owns here in Chicago. There's a movie theater chain that he's a part owner of that's here. What else did he buy into? He's done a lot of things.
Yeah.
And Magic's a brilliant businessman.
Let's talk about the NBA, and I want to start with your favorite player because there are a lot of assessments about Kyrie Irving, and one of them is his tradability. But a lot of reports are saying that he's not seen as a positive trade value. Your thoughts? Hey, the guy comes to practice when he gets ready. Maybe the earth, decided it was concave that day and he couldn't walk across the ditch. Your thoughts.
So I have a piece of news for you, James. There's something called misinformation in this world. And what happens is sometimes people say things, and I won't go so far as to say what they're saying is a lie, but what I'll say is the thing that they're saying is not entirely true and is being said purely for strategic reasons. There are teams that want him, right? But one, they want to drive down his value. Is shocker. They would like to pay less rather than pay more, James.
Well, he got look at that contract. That is a big pill to swallow.
It is. It's a very large contract. It's filled with money, and in exchange for it, you get a talented but complex individual. I think would probably be a good way to put it.
Politically correct way to put it. Yes.
Yes, it would. There's a lot of things going on inside of Kyrie Irving. He's a person who thinks of himself as an intellectual. Even though he was only at Duke for a few months, he clearly sort of has embraced a certain amount of, like I said, thinking of himself as a person of high intelligence. So Kyrie Andrew Irving is still one of the best ball handlers in the game. He's a good passer, but for a good passer, like I said, I wish he would have more assists. I don't know how his assist numbers are not higher. And yeah, people are just jumping
Probably,
on.
probably
Yeah.
the same reason why Russell Westbrook's assistants aren't. I mean, but at least Russell gets a triple double every night, or I mean, he does, man. I mean, when you look at the two players, in the same position, it would seem like you say, Kyrie should have more assists.
I mean, he's a career 5.7 assist guy, so that's not bad. But you look at him, compared to a guy who's a little less talented like Jason Kidd, and Jason Kidd's killing him, right? Killing him when it comes to those numbers. So I do want more from him, right? So Uncle Drew, aka the Ankle Taker, aka World B Flat, is one of those guys that in the right situation, I cannot stress the importance of those first few words, in the right situation. Those 4 words are everything when you're talking about a guy like Kyrie. People thought he was in the perfect situation when he was in Cleveland, right? He's the right-hand man to LeBron. He gets to be Robin to Batman, right? He gets to be Bucky to Captain America, right? He gets to be Kato to the Green Lantern, like all those whatever analogies you like to throw out there. And, he gets to grow up and learn and blah, 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 blah. Well, as we now know, from his own lips, in fact, that he did not see himself as Robin or Kato or any of those things. He very much thought that he was the show. And by the time, he was ready to move on from there after the 2017 season, he was ready to go someplace and really, truly prove he could be the show. Now, I want to make it clear that he can put up some, in the bubble year, right? In the bubble year, he was 27.4 points per game. I mean, he can do a lot of things on a basketball court. He is he's a good shooter, like I said, for a tremendous ball handler. He's shooting well enough from 3. I mean, he's 47% overall, and I think he's shooting, what was he shooting 3? Probably in the upper 30s. Yeah, 391, right? Almost 40%, 391 from 3. I mean, he's, other than the personality stuff and the fact that I wish he'd get another assist and a half or so per game, we're talking about a guy who's still one of the top lead guard, whatever term you want to use, I guess he's combo guard, whatever you want to use. He's still one of the top guys at his position. But not every team is right for him, James. There's not every place is the right place for Kyrie. So if you're talking about, and people are just posting crazy things because that's what happens, right? Ben Simmons for Kyrie straight up. Well, one, I mean, there's so many reasons that couldn't happen. But even if it did happen, right? Why would the Nets make that move? That's like, I keep coming back to that. I mean, even if you aren't thrilled with Kyrie, you are hurting your team's offense. You're crippling, in fact, your team's offense if you make that trade. So I don't think it's fun to write things, right? But that's all that is. You're having fun writing an article. Enjoy.
Well, now, since you mentioned Ben Simmons, he did not report to training camp.
Oh, he's never reporting to training camp, James.
So, and the 76ers are, kind of right now, they're saying that they're going to stick to their guns, that they're not getting rid of him. But how long can this still may go on? And, like you said, him to the Nets, no. We know that's not going to happen.
No, the Nets, once again, the Nets, I can't believe the Nets would even take seriously that opportunity.
Is there a team in contention in the West that really need Ben Simmons?
I mean, I don't know if the Timberwolves count, but people have talked about them being a possible landing spot. The fact is that the current version of Ben Simmons, and that's the only version of Ben Simmons that we know exists.
Yeah, I mean, whatever.
Right. People have been
The other
theorizing.
ones are in Marvel Comics. I mean,
Right. People have been theorizing about, this other Ben Simmons who apparently can shoot. And right. And according to his Instagram feed, that guy, may exist. But unfortunately, we don't have an Instagram basketball league yet. So as long as they have to play on a, full regular size court on television as opposed to on Instagram feed, I'm going to wait and see on his improved shooting. But yeah, I mean, are there teams that are at least going to kick the tires? Yeah, there are teams that are going to and should kick the tires on him.
Bill.
Yeah.
His improving hasn't even improved in NBA 2K.
Well, I mean, I think.
Yeah. That's he's speechless. There you
Here's what I'm going to say, and once again, I don't think it happens. But I think the Suns will at least think about it. Right? They already have a lot of really good shooters. What he could do for them that they could sort of use. One, a guy could take some of the ball handling load off of their existing backcourt, right? Their current backcourt. Two, their backcourt right now is one of the smaller ones in the NBA, right? They have it's not the smallest. I think it's in the bottom 4 in terms of height in the NBA. So they have a backcourt that's like 6'2" and 6'3.5" or something like that, if I remember correctly. So it's one of the smaller backcourts. So he would help you on the boards. He would help you on defense. He hustles on the court. I mean, he moves. He runs around. He makes plays. Even if he's a guy that's the king of your second unit, right? If you make him the guy who is the captain of the second unit, the guy who runs your energy team, the guys that, kind of what Trevor Ariza used to do, right, back in the day, get everybody organized and going on the second unit, those reserves. Now, that's a little too much to pay for a guy that brings that to the table. So that's what would have to happen for this deal to happen is the Sixers have to agree to eat some of that salary. We'll continue to pay X amount of his salary, and you pick up the other 60% or whatever it is, right? They're going to have to do that to move it. I don't think there's anybody out there who's going to swallow that whole salary. That's for what he is. So, gun to my head, I don't think I don't think it happens soon. I think it happens, but I think it takes a while.
Now, of course, Kyrie is not the only, guy out there in the NBA talking about, this nonsense about vaccines and, so LeBron comes out and he says that he thinks, after doing his research, that taking the vaccine is best for him and his family. So, I mean, when LeBron speaks, everybody listens. So where does this put Kyrie and some of these other outside of the box, I'll call them, politically correct again,
Yeah.
Believers in the NBA now that LeBron has kind of stepped over that line?
So here's what I'll say. And just to make it clear, I think at this point they're right around 95% having had at least one, if not both, of their vaccines. So it's not like, like Gadsden, Alabama or something, right? It's not a place where they're at like 50%. I mean, the vast majority of the players in the league are vaccinated. And I think that number will continue to creep upwards. It will at some point hit, right, a ceiling because of the people you just talked about. Some people are just contrarians, James. I think you know this, right? That person that says left when everyone else is saying right. That person that says dry when everyone else says wet. There's that person that just refuses, right? I have to show you that I'm an individual, right? And there's the old Japanese maxim that is the nail that sticks up that gets hammered down. I get it, right? I mean, some people just want to feel like they're the smartest kid, the whatever it is, right? The whatever term you want to use, that they want to show that, well, that's you, right? You sheeple can do that, but I've got this secret, line to all this different special super hush hush information or whatever it is they think they've got. I The longer I live, right, the more I realize that a lot of things are much simpler than people make them, James. So I remember when Dane Lillard was talking about it. He's like, I had to get a bunch of shots when I went to high school. Then I had to get a bunch of shots when I went to college, right? I had to get a bunch of shots when I went overseas for the Olympics. And he says, not once did I ever ask or even think about what was actually in the, right? For years, decades, right? Over a century, people have gone through processes of getting vaccinated. And for the most part, without even thinking about it, really, right? The only people I knew who didn't like getting vaccines, or this isn't getting like, but used to try to avoid them, was people who were just deathly afraid of needles. It had nothing to do with, them,
Right.
their research or whatever.
Yeah. See, here's the thing, Bill. I remember hearing, and once again, bringing my age into, I remember these same arguments against the Salk vaccine.
Sure.
I remember the same arguments when HIV, the AIDS epidemic. If a gay guy puts down a spoon and you go by the table, and a fly jumps by, all the ridiculous,
All of it.
everything, that. But today, since I know that I'm going to an event in L.A. On the 16th of October, I went and got my flu shot. I went and got a shingle shot. And the only reason why I didn't get a booster shot is because Moderna is not available. But if that had been available, I'd have been standing in line for that also. My point being, if someone was putting these tags or anything else into your body, if you've been through any type of service, if you've went to any type of school,
Yep.
if you've went overseas, like my man says, you've never asked what's in this vaccine. The only thing that you want to know is when you get to your destination that you can be admitted to that country. So
Right.
why is it so hard for people, especially highly paid individuals,
Yep.
that you don't really have to do the research yourself. You can
Yeah.
pay someone to do it for you. You can There are various ways. But I don't understand how all of a sudden we have this vaccine phobia in the last 2 years, and yet we've been taking vaccines, since we've been in elementary school.
Right. So it's funny because I'm a parent and my daughter is very different from me in a lot of ways, but the one thing that she and I have in common is we are researchers by nature. And unlike people who say they're doing their research, my daughter actually did some research. She looked some things up. She went to different websites. She checked out, some of what the whack, the whatever you want to call them, the anti people, what anti-vaxxers were saying on YouTube. Looked to see if any of the things they're saying were true. Eventually concluded that they were not, and my daughter got vaccinated. We didn't make her. We said we think it's a good idea. Your mother and I are both vaccinated, but we're going to let you're a young woman. You're in your teens now. If you decide not to, means that you have to pretty much stay home all the time. But we're open to whatever it is. And she did her research. She said, I've thought about it. I've done the research. I'm ready. So I don't mind people figuring out whatever their process is. But if your process involves factual information, you will decide to be vaccinated. It's that simple. Now, if your process involves something other than factual information, you may make other decisions. It is that simple.
Hey, facts matter. At least they used to. Yeah. But yeah. Speaking of facts matter, Russell Westbrook reportedly said hell no to joining the Clippers. Do you believe it?
He said, hell no to what?
Joining the Clippers instead of the Lakers.
Um, I just don't even believe he said that. Um, I think first of all, if we know nothing else about him, he's a proud dude, right? I mean, have we not established that? Is that not something that everyone signed on to, realizing that Russell Westbrook is a proud individual? And for reasons, right? There are specific places where I think he feels like he would belong or fit. And there's a bunch of other places, probably a larger of the two numbers between the two, where he feels like he wouldn't be a good fit. And I don't think I'm just talking about basketball here. I think, once again, I'm also talking about, personalities and, how people's various, approaches to basketball and life, might either complement or not complement each other. So I certainly believe he said it, and he might even admit it. It doesn't mean it won't happen. Things change. But yes, I believe he said it, and I believe he meant it.
It's kind of interesting when you think about uh, Kawhi Leonard. Uh, a lot of times people say, going back to old cliches, white men speak with forked tongue. Uh, if that were the case, then Kawhi would have to be a part of the Confederacy, would he not? I mean, look at the things that the incident with LeBron, for instance. I mean, do you think that there are a lot of players breaking their necks to come and play with Kawhi?
I wouldn't say there's a lot of players breaking their necks to play with Kawhi. I think that players nowadays, particularly, James, look at, well, money is always on the list, right? Money's on the list, and always has been, always will be. But here's the things that have changed. I think players take their brand more seriously now than ever before. Will this situation, will this location, will this organization help me build my brand, right? This is a part of the thought process now. Not just what this means for you in terms of your basketball career, but what does this mean for you in terms of your line of men's accessories? What does this mean for your opportunities to get involved in movies or television? Or what does this mean for your opportunities to get involved in, a bunch of other things? I mean, think about how many players, even while they're still active players, have branched out or expanded into other things. I mean, we know that LeBron James owns a production company. We know that Kobe, towards the end of his playing career, started getting involved in other stuff, including, once again, movie production. We know that, we just talked about Magic, and of course, Magic really got really into it once he retired. But even before he retired, he started getting involved a little bit in investing and grabbing up some real estate and things like that, even while he was still a player. So this is how basketball is different from the other major sports in America, is that personal relationships can sometimes trump everything except maybe money. And sometimes maybe even that, though I'm not sure that happens often, but guys will decide not to go to a certain team because they don't like a certain manager or a certain player. There's a lot of things that happen. Some of it's, behind the scenes that goes on about why certain players aren't on certain teams. And sometimes it's as simple as them saying, I'll retire first, right? There are some players that just have it in their mind that this is where I belong and won't go someplace else. And if you're not far enough up the food chain, that's not up to you anyway. But yeah, I think that players say things, particularly star players, say things sometimes trying to reach an audience different than the audience you may be thinking they're trying to reach, or I may be thinking they're trying to reach, right? They talk to other players sometimes to the press. Smart players, make a lot of use of the press. And once again, sometimes things they're saying are strategic as opposed to just purely factual. Sometimes a player is trying to position something. But yeah, that's where I am on that.
We talked a little bit all during the season about Pop and the Spurs. As usual, we start the season knowing just as much as we did at the end of last season. Absolutely nothing.
Right.
Your thoughts on Pop and the Spurs?
My thoughts on what was the last thing you said?
Pop and the Spurs. What are they going to do?
Well, I believe they should be slightly better next year. I think Greg Popovich feels like his successor, who may already be on the staff, but isn't quite ready. I think if he felt like his successor was ready, he would step down. But I think for whatever reason, whether it be correctly or incorrectly, I think he believes that his successor is not ready to take over and coach at the permanently. But yeah, could they add 4, 5, 6, 7 more wins this year? Yes, I would say yes. I think they'll be a slightly better team.
When you speak of like players exploiting their brand and whatnot, the Spurs is not really the team to go to if that's what your outlook is.
And that's what I was talking about. When the Spurs have built their really great franchises, the vast majority of those players were homegrown players, James. They added, like I said, the occasional veteran piece, guys that they could afford, and they would come 7th or 8th off the bench. That's a guy they very often have gone out and found in free agency. But if you just go back and look at those rosters from those days, that peak run, the vast majority of the guys that played for that team, especially first stringers, but first and second string included, were people who'd been brought up, in that organization. The only downside is you have to be right almost all the time with your evaluations in order to get great and stay great as a team that, as the old saying goes, throws nickels around like manhole covers.
Yeah. It should be very interesting to see what happens out of that. Don should be coming in here pretty soon, and maybe we can get some insight on what's happening down there in San Antonio. But in the meantime, we can talk some college football here. It's not like we're already kind of deep into the season here, and reports. The National Labor Relations Board says that college players at private schools can unionize. What's your thoughts on that, especially considering the state of the unions?
I mean, I don't know why not, right? So here's a piece of information. While I was a graduate assistant at the University of Illinois, there was an attempt to unionize us. What's it called? What's the name of it? Oh my gosh. SIUE 99, I think, was the local that came out to visit us. And so it's like a Cerberus workers union. And the university did what often they do, and they said that graduate assistants, right, are not truly employees, and all the stuff, right? All the classic. They played all the hits. And they, basically tried to block the attempt to unionize. The whole point of for the school. The whole point of graduate assistance is to save all that money, right? Because you don't have to, other than health insurance that is part of the student group health insurance plan that's available to you once you're a full-time student. Other than that, we don't really have any benefits, right? I think you also, I guess you can count the university savings loan, I guess. You have access to that. But those are the extent of your benefits as a graduate assistant, James, right? The health insurance that is also extended to just regular students. And I think the one thing you get that regular students don't get is the ability to go to or make use of or have an account at the schools' savings and loan. I think that's it. I think that's the grand list. And so unionizing, one, would have said, even though these people work many fewer hours than professors, they're doing work that otherwise would be done by professors. And sometimes, like I'll use myself as an example, there were times when I was doing things that a professor should have or would have done instead, and they were able to pay me, grad assistant wages, which is the kind of, where you can't always afford to eat as much as you would like kind of wages. So, yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah, the ramen noodle diet. Come on, we've all been
Right. Well, for me, I was a big beans and rice guy. I would go down to the Giant Eagle or Food Giant or whatever it's called. But there was a store a few miles off campus that was a full-on supermarket, and they had the bulk bags of beans and rice. So I'd buy one of those big old bulk bags of beans because there was one point where my food budget was about $36 a month. So I had to, now this is a few years back, and the standard of living is pretty, it's cheap to live near, at least it was in those days, to live in Champaign. And then luckily I got a job at a restaurant. That helped. But yes, GAs do not make a lot of money, right? If you're in a sort of a prized position, like you do research or you're working on a patent or a cure for something, then that's different, right? But most GAs in most departments, if you're a teaching assistant, if you're in the athletic department or the school of social work or whatever, and you're doing, not high attention, high money work, I remember that after taxes, I made $339.50 every other week, I believe. So yeah, it wasn't lavish, I guess is what I'm trying to say, James.
Well, speaking of beans, back in the day, I remember when 50 cents you could get 2 bags of beans.
Yes, right. Yes. Well, that was a different.
I went to get beans yesterday. Same size bag, 12 ounces, I believe. $3.99. Is it the dirt? There's still beans.
Yes, they are still beans.
They're still grown by the same process.
Process has changed very, very little. Yes, correct.
But the price from $12.50, from 12 cents,
yes,
or 13 cents if you want to round it up, to $4, Bill. Yogurt hasn't went up that much. Butter hasn't went up that much. Once again, I rant. Old man.
Right. That's one of the. You're playing all the hits. Like I said, that's a classic old man rant. My father used to talk about going to the movies, and admission was like, I don't know, 10 cents or something crazy. And
15 cents a bag of popcorn.
Right. Some of it. But and then he would say on top of that, oh, you weren't seeing a movie, you were seeing movies, right?
Right. And the newsreel.
Right. There'd be a newsreel, there'd be an interstitial like Bugs Bunny, Tom and Jerry, or whatever it is. As you said, the newsreel, and then 2 movies, right? You'd be there all day practically.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, if you were a big baller and you had 50 cents, that means you could
Hey,
buy enough candy to get yourself and your little girlfriend sick.
hey, Wednesday Westerns. You could watch Westerns all day. Hop along Cassidy, Tom Mix. Hey,
Yep.
really, of course, wasn't I think the only, let's see,
Gene Autry, yes, right, all that.
yeah, so I mean, but hey, prices. Uh,
Yep.
Sticking with there's Don. I'm glad we didn't move on
Yep.
because now I have another.
Yes.
Uh,
Woo!
what's up, Don?
What's up, guys?
Don,
It's been a long day.
we were just talking about the cost of college meals. And Bill was talking about when back in the day you could go down to your local grocery market and pick up a bag of beans and for a few cents, and that would maybe get you through the weekend. Some of those Vienna sausage. Come on, you guys know what I'm talking about. Come on, we're all athletes here. We know what potted meat. We know what all this stuff is. You can pretend, but that's all right. I'm gonna be real. Okay. So anyway, you know, and I was mentioning to Bill Don, like whereas before you could get two bags of beans for 50 cents. Yesterday I went and got a 12-ounce bag of beans and had to pay almost $4. The growing process hasn't changed. I mean, so a black eyed pea is worth $3 now, where it was only worth 12 cents back in our day. I mean, Don, what's your thoughts here?
Well, it's called inflation.
Well,
Um,
and the reason why this is I'm trying to tie all this together is because we're talking about the National Labor Relations Board saying that college players in private schools can unionize. So I mean, so now instead of eating beans on the weekend, are they at least going to be able to get hot dogs, Taco Bell, Jack in the Box? I mean,
well, you talk about private schools. You're talking about your Notre Dame, your BYU, your Baylor, your Wake Forest. They're not eating beans. Their dining halls are just as nice as Clemson's or UT or whoever. So they're not going to be eating beans anyway. Although my mom used to soak some beans overnight, put some ham hocks in there, and then serve it over some cornbread. That was
I got some smoked turkey wings out here right now, and the beans have been soaking since yesterday. So that's how beans go. And of course, no, you can't have beans without cornbread, Don. So
yeah. In fact, in my house, we pour everything over cornbread: chicken and dumplings, beans, chili,
chili, yeah. Hey, okay,
chili and cornbread. That goes together.
yeah.
And,
Jalapeno
believe it or
cornbread.
not, this is gonna sound weird, but if you put some like slice up some cornbread and put a little drizzle of mustard, and then throw the chili and some cheese on top of it, diced onions.
Texas chili there, Don. Texas chili.
Yeah, no beans.
Don, we were just talking about how quiet things are in San Antonio as far as the Spurs and Pop. Uh, you got anything that you can tell us?
Nothing. There's nothing going on in the Spurs except they created a job for Ginobili. He's a special assistant to the bench coach or what, I don't know what it is, but they're getting him back into the to the game. So that's all. That's last thing I heard about the Spurs.
Well, Don, you haven't been around for a couple of weeks, so
Yeah,
tell us about the ups and downs of the University of Texas. What is
ups and
going on?
downs. Well, start off undefeated. Took the opening game against Louisiana. Both quarterbacks looked decent, and then they went to Fayetteville, and all hell broke loose. starting quarterback guy named Hudson Card had a little deer in the headlight syndrome, and they came in. They put in Casey Thompson.
Yep.
Now you might remember his dad, Charles Thompson.
Charles, yep.
OU. And Casey Thompson, I'm going to tell you right now, this kid is the real deal. He's already in graduate school. He's taken 6 hours, and he spends all his free time. They said he spent up to 12 hours a day watching film. This kid has those Peyton Manning study habits. In fact, he might exceed Peyton Manning. In the summer, he took his 3 favorite receivers, went down to Miami, worked out with one of the pro coaches in Miami. So he got the starting job against Rice. Well, Rice is Rice, and he just had a phenomenal game. And then last week against Texas Tech, another phenomenal game. I think the statistic is he has led Texas to touchdowns in 24 of the last 29 drives, going back to last year's Alamo Bowl. This kid is unbelievable. If he continues the success, you'll see his name in the Heisman. He's kind of a dark horse because he didn't start the year off as a starter.
Right.
But this kid is unbelievable. Of course, you have probably the best running back room in the country with Bijan and Roshan and this Killian Robinson. So Texas is stacked. They got to play some defense, though. They gave up too many yards against Texas Tech, but I'm cautiously optimistic that this is not the year. Well, and another thing I got going is Sarkisian is not Tom Herman. He's not Charlie Strong.
Yep.
He's got Texas offense looking like Alabama's offense last year.
Right.
And they're just clicking. They got good Xavier Worthy, true freshman, leading receiver. This kid's unbelievable. He caught, I think, 5 passes for 100 yards, 2 touchdowns last week. True freshman. I think he's a California kid, and he decommitted from Michigan to come to Texas.
Bill, we saw Oregon upset my Buckeyes, but is Oregon the best team in the Pac-12?
I mean, the sort of easy, obvious answer is yes. But what I will say is I don't think there's like some people think there's a huge gap, and I don't think there is. I think there's a couple other teams in the conference who would at least give them a real run. And I think that's a pretty competitive conference overall. Are there 1 or 2 really legitimately bad teams? Yes. But a bunch of teams in that conference, I mean, Utah's not great, but they're never bad. They're going to be competitive. There are going to be a lot of games. They're physical, and they're well coached, and they're just a tough team. Nobody enjoys playing Utah. Arizona State has a lot of talent, right? USC, despite all of its many issues and problems, is just a repository of 4- and 5-star recruit types. Oregon State's scrappy and interesting and has some interesting players. Washington State is very Washington State. It's not like any other team in the world in so many ways. With the departure of Mike Leach, it's still an offense that wants to throw the ball, but not quite, all the time like it was with Leach, or not quite, it was still a good amount. But I mean, there's a bunch of teams that are good, but the best team, yes, are the best team at this moment. I think they're the best, and the hard thing is figuring out exactly who number 2 is.
I would say UCLA.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah.
Don, this was, I think, the Sports Crib was just a pup then, if we were even on the air. But I remember discussing this particular subject when Lane Kiffin joined Lou Saban at Alabama, and the big question: will they be able to coexist? Is Saban putting his job on the line by hiring Kiffin? Don, seemed like that worked out pretty well. Lane Kiffin is now the coach of number 12,
Yep.
Mississippi. And
Yep.
yeah, I mean, it's not that they're going to necessarily beat Alabama, but do you think that hiring kind of changed the face of college football, Doc?
Well, I've been a critic of Lane Kiffin for a while. I always thought he was overrated, but he is actually showing me something at Mississippi right now. Corral is a good quarterback he has there. They're competitive. Are they going to knock off Bama? No.
No.
Bama's going to be. I think Bama might be better this year than they were last year. It's kind of shaping up that way. And the SEC is a little bit weaker than it was. I think Alabama's stronger, but I think overall the SEC is not
Right.
doesn't have the bite they had. A&M is about to get exposed big time. LSU, it's a coin flip what kind of team they have. Arkansas, Florida will be the teams behind Alabama, I think. But I think Lane Kiffin, with all the criticism I've given him in the past years, I think he's actually found a good place where he can work some magic.
Bill, I mean, when you look at that Alabama offense before Lane Kiffin, it was pretty much 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and then all of a sudden, how many wide receivers do we have drafted into the NFL? Alabama wide receivers. We got 3 Alabama quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean.
Yep. And there'll be a bunch more again this year.
So, did this hiring prove as a turnaround in college football, especially the Alabama program? Bill?
Yep.
Yeah.
You asking about Ole Miss specifically?
No, I'm asking about how much that hiring shaped college football. The hiring that Saban's hiring of Luke Kiffin, how much of an impact it has had on the game.
Well, so here's the two big things. So Lane Kiffin, first of all, got a chance to rehabilitate his reputation. But people somehow forget that with an inferior team, when he was the coach at Tennessee, they took Alabama down to a missed long field goal, right? To lose 7-6. To say that there's any, to me, I can never question whether he could coach or not. My question is, could he coexist? He is by his own admission, kind of a cocky douche. Now, I think he's dialed back on some of it, but young Lane Kiffin was nothing nice. Very, very high-handed, very arrogant. I think he's gotten over some of that. But the impact is twofold. One is you saw Alabama go to the quote-unquote dark side, right? Now they're going up tempo. Now they're going 4 and 5 wide, right? All the things that Saban had complained about and wanted to see legislated out of the game, in fact, in some cases, were now things they were doing, right? Because adaptation, people said your most important ability is availability. I mean, I might say your most important ability is adaptability, right? If you are able to change when things change and how things change to stay current, to me, that's just as important as any of the other, ability sayings that we have. And there's a lot of opportunity for Lane Kiffin where he is now. He's at a place where they have a lot of money and resources, but they have realistic expectations. Take a note, Texas fans. Now, Ole Miss has a lot of money, a lot of resources, but they have realistic expectations. So instead of crying and wailing and gnashing your teeth when you go 9-3, they have a big old party when they go 9-3. I get it. Texas is used to being blue bloods and royalty and this and that and the other thing. And someday that will be true again, but it's not true right now. And you just have to learn to, quote unquote, enjoy the process and trust it also.
Any rebuttal there, Don, before I go on?
No, that I agree totally.
Uh, Don, we talked about how some of these schools and really have a chance to establish themselves, and we've seen some teams, they've been able to bring themselves up in the rankings, but when it comes to legitimacy, they seem to fall short. Now, this weekend we have number 7, the Cincinnati Bearcats, against number 9, the Notre Dame. Of course, they won last week. They beat Wisconsin. But Don, let's just say for shits and giggles, it's cribbing after dark. So that Cincinnati beats Notre Dame. Where do you rank Cincinnati?
If Cincinnati beats Notre Dame, so you're saying a number 7 beats number 9,
Yes.
which in theory that's the way it should be. I say they're either at 6 or 7, depending on what happens to 1, 2, 3, and 4 and 5.
Right.
So, I don't think Cincinnati's going to beat Notre Dame, but I'm not going to bet money on it either. That should actually be a good game.
It should be a good game, and it should be a competitive game. But when you go according to, I'm not talking necessarily about teams. I'm talking about ranking. And Bill, this, kind of when you rank an independent, a school like Cincinnati, ahead of the institutional schools like in Ohio State and Alabama and Oregon, for instance. But to me, if Notre Dame and I'm using the myth of Notre Dame, not the reality of Notre Dame. If Cincinnati beats Notre Dame, I think that they should be ranked in the top 4. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that I think that they're going to be that they're going to beat in Alabama, they're going to beat a number 3, or but for the sake of numbers and for the sake of the playoffs, you would have to put this team in the number 5. Bill, your thoughts? Bill, you there?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Thought I lost you. My bad.
Yeah, I'm having a little trouble hearing you. That's all.
No, I'm saying if number 7 beats number 9, I think they should be in the top 4.
Yeah. Oh, metaphysical. I think it's metaphysical
ranking.
certitude. Yes, 100%. Agreed. They will have earned it too. I mean, they beat a Big Ten school. Obviously, a bit of a letdown from last year for Indiana, but they beat a Big Ten school. They will have beaten, I guess if there was a team that sort of ran the independent world, the bully on the block, and if they continue to beat every team that they get a chance to play, I mean, to me, that still means something. We can have opinions, we'd have whatever, but if one player is doing something that no one's ever done before, that player deserves to be, like I said, recognized and seen, and like I said, their opinion raised. But yes, 100%.
You're Heisman hopeful, Bill.
Well, I've thrown out a few. Yeah, I've thrown out a few. I'm going to start with my dark horses, right? So here's a guy that, if everything goes right, he'll get invited to New York. He can't win, not because he's not good enough, but because his team isn't prominent enough. But I'll start with Jake Haener, the Washington transfer, speaking of the West Coast, who found his way to Fresno State and is lighting it up. And one other a group of 5 quarterback who's been killing it this year is Bailey Zappi from, Houston Baptist originally, but is now at Western Carolina. And once again, just putting up silly numbers. Back to the chalk, right? The guys that everybody knows about and everybody talks about. Well, obviously, the top quarterback types, right? So whether that be Rattler or though Rattler has faltered this year, but Howell's as well, quite frankly. But whoever it is they hit upon amongst the available, quarterbacks, so obviously going to be probably 3 out of 4, if not 4 out of 4 of the people invited. I'd love to see them continue the thing of inviting a receiver, particularly if that receiver also can really give you pop in the return game. And so Jameson Williams, right, who had 2 return touchdowns last week. I think if he continues and closes out big, the thing that hurts him is that he shares, the team with John Mechie, and Mechie also makes a fair number of catches. But I think Jameson Williams is just more talented. Other guys that I think, obviously the struggles at Iowa State have kept Breece Hall from being a guy who I think would have been a finalist otherwise. Let me see. There's about 2 or 3 other running backs who I think have at least a chance, right? Maybe not a great opportunity, but a chance. Mateo Durant at Duke. Once again, Duke's futility may stop him because, you have to go back to, I think, Paul Hornung, the last time somebody who played for a loser got there, and, of course, in his case, even won. Who else? What else? I mean, I think that's probably most of the main ones. So, a couple. Sorry, they're not all of them. A couple others.
Well, let's give Don. Don, you got any Heisman hopefuls hidden over there?
I do. Right now, I would have to say, and I know this happens every year, but I think Bryce Young is putting up great numbers. Alabama's going to win. Yes, he's a freshman, but he's a redshirt freshman, so kind of like Johnny Manziel when that year. I think Bryce Young, just because he plays at Alabama, he becomes a candidate just on its own. I think JT Daniels, another quarterback in the SEC, he's doing great. I know I'm a little bit sounds a bit homer, but I really like Bijan Robinson at Texas, running back. I like Casey Thompson at Texas as quarterback. Like I said, this guy, you go look at his drive efficiency, his completion percentage. I think he's completing like 75% of his passes. I like those guys. In the Big 12, I don't really see anyone else in the Big 12 other than those guys. Spencer Rattler, people throw him out, but from what I'm hearing, he's barely holding on to the starting job at Oklahoma all of a sudden.
Right.
Those Sooner fans can be brutal.
All right, guys. Well, look here. My most exciting news of the day is the halftime show at the Super Bowl. Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Mary J. Blige, Kendrick Lamar, But anyway, to me, this was kind of like an all-star of who and who. Who when you look at the last few halftime shows that we've had. I'm not gonna be the downer and say that they were a D acts, but I really like this act, and I think it's very fitting for the Pepsi Super Bowl halftime show. Don, your thoughts here? I mean, I'm an old man. I understand. It might not quite be Texas, but it's very much California.
Do you remember? And I'm sure you remember it because we're that age. Do you remember when every year the Super Bowl halftime show is a group called Up With People?
Yeah.
Do you remember that shit?
Yeah.
Up With People.
You're really dating us. I
know. It's like some kind of Like they kind of remind me of some kind of cult, but anyway, yeah. I mean, when you got Snoop Dogg as part of your show, and Eminem, and who else?
Mary J. Blige.
Mary J.
Hey, man,
Blige. Yeah. So that's I mean that's you're bringing in the heavy duty guys right there.
What do you think, Bill?
Well, I think we're all excited, right? I mean, I guess it might be like the Koch brothers or whatever, but I mean, virtually the entire football world is buzzing about it. I'm all over. I was on Twitter a lot, and people were just thrilled. It's setting a bar that's pretty high. Good luck to whoever is going to do this the year after them, because it's going to be a tough ask. But I'm incredibly excited. It's well deserved. It's players that make sense. Many of them, like I said, already have their taglines or have uniform, but whatever it is, a lot of them have the stuff in place already. Because I mean, you guys know this. They don't just say, "Oh, it's a few weeks for the Super Bowl. Let's get ready." No, I mean the Super Bowl is planned years in advance. Certain things at least are planned years in advance. But yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be great, and I think it's going to help maybe sort of bridge some gaps in terms of generation.
Guys, we're going to talk about Tom Brady and his return to Foxborough very shortly. But in the meantime, let's get some of these little minor things out of the way. Don, now that Matt Stafford walks on water, and are there any odds of him staying above water when these defensive coordinators in his division see him for the second time?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say Stafford's walking on water, but he's shown that what a change of scenery can do for a guy. But
I watched Skip and Shannon this morning. Then I watched what's the guy that comes on after them? What's it? The Herd. Then the guys. I mean, all I heard all day was Matt Stafford. I even got another question down here about Matt Stafford compared to your favorite, Don. So I'm interested to get your take on that. But yeah, I mean, has Matt Stafford made LA, or has LA made Matt Stafford? I mean, gee, what's up there, Don?
Well, just for whenever I hear Skip Bayless, I usually take the opposite. I'm not a big Skip Bayless fan, by the way. But that goes back several years.
Well, the alternative is Stephen A. So
hey, I could take some Stephen A. I like that. Okay. But yeah, I mean, Stafford is he's a unique quarterback. He's always been on the verge of being like one of the elites, always on the verge, and I just don't think he didn't have the type of support in Detroit that that Breeze had in New Orleans and Peyton had in his places and Brady. He kind of falls outside that loop, but I think he might be able to see a little bit some of that similar success in LA.
Bill, has Matt Stafford become that much better since he's with the Rams? Or well, like I said, is it the Rams or is it Matt Stafford?
Well, there's really only well, here's the things as you really look at the Steelers position by position. Right?
No, we're talking about Matt Stafford.
Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford's fantastic. I told you he'd be fantastic back when we talked before the season began. This surprises me literally less than none. I said he would be a dark horse contender for the NFL MVP. Said that weeks ago.
And you're sticking by your guns there.
He's going to be terrific. He's going to put up crazy numbers.
All right. Well, like I said, so you don't think the second time through the deck is going to be any less successful?
Sorry?
You don't think that the second time through the deck is going to be any less successful against the same DCs?
Well, okay, both teams get to watch tape. And it's not like he's some flash in the pan fluke. He's been playing in this league for a long time. Uh, and what do you mean by figure out? If you're playing cover two and somebody has the arm timing and accuracy to keep zipping it in there in that what they call that hole shot on the outside, 17 to 20 yards down the field, there's no like that's what he's supposed to do. Either you got to stop playing cover two, or you got to cheat, right? You got to maybe send a robber or something or blitz him. But he's been a top 8 talent who's reminding people that he is not number 8, right? He has an arm. He's not like a runner, but he can move around a little bit. He's a tough guy. I mean, he's played, with things that other quarterbacks wouldn't play with. He, like I say, has a cannon. I mean, maybe right there in the discussion with Josh Allen and maybe a couple others for the strongest arm in the league. And of course, obviously, he has a teammate in the league from his days in high school. And, of course, Kershaw was his center when they played football together. But the fact is that he's a pretty complete quarterback. And finally, he's in a good situation with a lot of talent, and people are starting to see what he really was all along.
Bill, what grade would you give the officiating so far this season?
Woo! Okay, well, I'm going to give it an I for incomplete, but if that incomplete was removed, it would be probably a D. I've seen some. I don't mind when it's bad, and I don't mind when it's slow, but I do mind when it's both. If you're going to be bad, be fast. If you're going to take a long time, get it right. So that's what bothers me. Is sometimes they'll have these longer reviews and then decide not to change anything when there's enough. To me, there's clearly enough evidence to make a change to the call. There have been, as usual, some phantom, a bunch, it's usual stuff like roughing the pass or whatever, things that, it looked bad or the guy was close, but he didn't actually do the things that are entailed in what it should take to qualify for that type of infraction. And I think the groundswell will reach the league just enough that they'll, drop a few Huxtable triangles off somebody's sweater or whatever it is that it takes to make people feel comfortable. That's what I think on that.
Your thoughts, Don? You're a teacher even. What grade are you giving these officials?
The games I've seen, I really can't say. There's been some massive screw-ups, but then when I watch Sports Center and read articles on different games, I'm kind of like with Bill. I'd give it a C or maybe a D plus, maybe. I'll give an example. This isn't pro, but tonight we had a game, as you know. I was working. We won 16-12, by the way. So it was 4th and 7. And because in the field, the other team went for it, 4 down territory. 4th and 7 to do a hard count. We jump off sides, 5-yard penalty. Got 7. You got 5. So it's still 4th and 2. Nope. First down.
Ah!
Got a 7-yard freaking penalty. And, oh man, our fan base went crazy, but it's a JV game, so. But yeah, so what you want about the NFL, as bad as it is, there's worse out there.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys have been watching the game, but it's the Jaguars have just pulled ahead 20-14, and
I forgot there's a game on tonight.
Yeah. Fortunately now Thursday night games are only carried on the NFL network. But we've seen these two young rookies. Of course, this is Burrow's second year. It's Trevor Lawrence's first year, but your impressions of these two young quarterbacks, Joe Morrow Joe Burrow on his progress, and Trevor Lawrence on a team that's filled with growing pains, but giving the Bengals all they can handle. Don?
Yeah, I think Burrow and Trevor Lawrence will have a great. They're going to have a great NFL career. Who knows where they'll end up? But if you think about the NFL, there's so many young, good quarterbacks right now. I think Kyler Murray, Arizona, Josh Allen up in Buffalo,
Justin Herbert.
Herbert, yes, exactly. Mahomes. So, yeah, there's a good crop of young guys. So as Breeze, Brady, and the Mannings kind of filter out, you had this other group coming up. And so I think Burrow fits in there. I think Trevor Lawrence will fit in there. It's all looking good.
Your thoughts on tonight's game, Bill, and this, of course, certainly, two young guys that we're going to see for quite some time. Or at least
they're both talented quarterbacks. Burrow is ahead of Lawrence mentally, and Lawrence is ahead of Burrow physically. Trevor Lawrence is a rare athlete at the size, has an extremely strong arm, but he does come from a system that in college, two things. One is that he played with a lot of talent, usually superior talent to the teams he was facing in college, and additionally, a lot of the concepts, a lot of things they were able to run while he was in college would not work, or in some cases, no one would even really try them at this level of football. So, he has to learn some things, but I think he'll be fine. And Joe Burrow is on the cusp of breakout stardom as well if he can just stay healthy.
Bill, last week when we talked about the Vikings, and they were 0-2.
Yep.
Where did this Kirk Cousins come from that we saw Sunday?
Well, remember when you asked me about the Vikings the first time, and I said that the only thing consistent about Kirk Cousins was
inconsistency.
Yep. Remember when I said that? I said that because it's true. He is capable of looking like a top 5 quarterback, and he's capable of looking like a guy that is just in there until your starter gets done going to the bathroom or getting a new pair of shoes or whatever it is. Like he can literally look like a guy who shouldn't be starting in the league at all, and he can look like a top 5 guy, and sometimes in the same darn game. So that's one thing, right? He's a guy who's an overachiever also. He was okay, a solid player in college at Michigan State. Is a 4th-round draft pick in the same year by the same team when Robert Griffin III is their first rounder, and he's being groomed to be a career backup basically to Robert Griffin III, and then that injury, right, and then coming back from it too quickly, spelled the end for Robert Griffin III's career as a starting quarterback, right, which never recovered, his career at least, and opened the way for Kirk Cousins, who was essentially one of Jay Gruden's type of people, right? They clicked. He has had a couple of really good years and parlayed that into, this epic contract that he signed with $84 million guaranteed. That's 84, 000, 000. In case you were wondering, I've never seen that kind of money up close. Sometimes if I'm watching a heist movie or something, but it is, even in an NFL where money is spent much more freely than ever, it's still kind of a eye popper of a deal. And you add to that, like I said, just the fact that he's had some good moments. He has some absolute terrible moments, and it's impossible to know which one's coming, unfortunately. So you can't really plan. But he's, I think that we're seeing a situation with a bit of a changing of the guard at the quarterback position, right? A bunch of young quarterbacks. The last of sort of that last great quarterback group is finally going to retire. We're assuming, James, at the end of this season. So that group that came in with Rivers and Manning, everything, they're the last of them will be gone. Drew Brees is gone. Who knows what will happen with Tom Brady? But Aaron Rodgers has a couple good years left in him, too, it looks like. But the rest of that old group, and then we have Russ, who's kind of a bit in between, right? Russell Wilson is not as old as the old guys, but he's not a young quarterback either. So he's splitting the difference. But we're about to have a big old turnover, right? We're about to have Russ is going to be one of the old guys soon, right? He won't be in the middle in another year or two. We'll be talking about as one of the old quarterbacks because all the other quarterbacks, Wilson and all these other cats that have entered the league in the past couple years, and a bunch of new ones are going to enter the league this year. And some of those guys are going to become NFL starters. So we're going to have a very young, sort of on aggregate, of starting NFL coaches with, one or two old guys. But that's a switch, a changeover. It's been a long time since the best quarterbacks in the league, and of course, obviously Patrick Mahomes is the spearhead here, were guys that weren't 30 yet. But that's soon going to be true that the best quarterbacks in the league will be guys, almost all of them will be guys that aren't 30. That's it.
At least the top 5 or 6. Don, your thoughts on Kirk Cousins, the $84 million man?
Well, Kirk Cousins. The question is which will the real Kirk Cousins arrive or show up, whatever.
Please stand up.
And so we are seeing Kirk Cousins.
He's here.
He's he'll play like Brady one week and play like Grady the next. Grady's a Sanford Son reference, by the way.
Yes, we got that. Thank you. Whitney Mayo. Yes, is the actor's name. Yes.
But so I'm sure Bill will tell us what Grady's full name was, but
yes, I would. Well, the actor's name is Whitman. The actor's name is Whitman Earl Mayo. But yes.
Love it. I love this show. Yeah, but that's what Kirk Cousins is. He's going to be Brady or he'll be Grady. And so sometimes he'll do 2-3 weeks of Brady, and then Grady will show up. Sometimes he'll do 2-3 Gradys, and Brady will show up.
Now, I'm going to skip over this question for a minute, but I'm going to come back to it just because of the Stafford part of this. And Don Golden Tate says that if Stafford would have went to Green Bay, he would have been more successful than Aaron Rodgers. Really? Don, I mean, hey, I'll admit, I live in California. I smoke a lot of weed. I haven't smoked this much yet.
Hey, I think maybe Golden Tate's hanging out with Josh Gordon, maybe. I don't know. But, substance abuse, it's terrible, isn't it? I'm not a big fan of Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers is a special breed of quarterback. Stafford, like I said Stafford is right below that, I think, as far as the tiers go. But no, Aaron Rodgers is the face of that franchise. Matthew Stafford would not have – he would have success at Green Bay, but he would not have Aaron Rodgers type success.
I mean,
in my opinion.
I mean, when you look at Aaron Rodgers, he's only won one Super Bowl. So, I mean, it might not be a long stretch here, but
it's so funny to me when people say things like only one Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I need to introduce you some people who would be thrilled to have only one Super Bowl.
No, but hold it now. Remember, my favorite team is the Steelers. We're talking about Tom.
We have the same favorite team. We're both very spoiled.
But you're also talking about Tom Brady with multiple Super Bowls.
Right.
you know,
But
so
you
when I,
understand that you're identifying the exceptions, not the rule, right, James?
yes, yes, I do understand that, but my thing is, would Matthew Stafford have matched that? And even, I mean, according to Golden State, he would have won more than one. So, I
Well,
mean, I now, you know, I don't see this. Like I said, I mean,
right.
you have been a big Matthew Stafford advocate. Uh,
Sure.
your
But
thoughts? I
but
mean,
but that doesn't mean he's Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that's
no, 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 no,
you
no.
can, I can appreciate both and still realize one of them is a first ballot Hall of Famer and one of them is not.
Okay, all right. So I'm assuming that you're saying that Matt Stafford is not.
I think Matthew Stafford is a rare talent. He is. I'll tell you what I'll tell you what he really is. He is John Elway in a much worse situation. So John Elway went to a team that was good. The Broncos weren't not terrible when Elway got there, right? They were a team that was pointing in the right direction. Dan Reeves had a probably unnecessarily complex offense. And so there were times when he struggled in it. Then when Shanahan came in, not a coincidence, they all of a sudden started winning like crazy. He went to several Super Bowls, right? People forget, or maybe don't forget, but even though they lost, he was in the Super Bowl quite a few times before he won those two at the end. The and Stafford's a very similar guy, but he went to a bad team, a really bad team. Like that's the difference is, I mean, it wasn't like he went to a team that was decent or okay or scrappy or competitive. No, they were a terrible football team. I mean, bad, really, really bad. And he took them from being just impossible to watch almost to an interesting competitive losing franchise. But an interesting competitive losing franchise. I mean, look at the names of some of the dudes they've drafted in the first round there. It's like a who's who of, wow, I forgot about that guy. I mean, God bless Charles Rogers wherever he is and whatever he's doing. Roy Williams. I mean, they had spectacularly poor drafts. That was one thing. They didn't do a great job in free agency. And you add to that they had just now. I think they have Brad Holmes now, right? They have Brad Holmes there now, and I think for the first time in multiple decades, they now have a front office that I think is well run, that is going to build the talent level of that team and keep it high for a while. But of course, Stafford is now gone. He won't be benefiting from any of this, but the players who will be on the Lions team now will benefit from Brad Holmes being in place and him having made some smart moves already. So that team's going to get better. But, I mean, I do this before. Remember I talked about Archie Manning and Roger Staubach? Roger Staubach's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, probably not Hall of Famer at all. He goes to the Saints. And if Archie Manning does go to the Cowboys, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Situation is everything, James.
Yeah, hey, you can ask somebody that's been in some situational you know
If
hot
if,
spots here.
if Doug Williams if Doug Williams doesn't end up at Tampa Bay, ends up in Washington like he did later in his career, that's another guy that would have probably had a better reputation.
Oh, he had a very different career otherwise, yes.
But Tampa Bay was terrible back in the day.
Oh, they ruined so many. They made Steve Young look like a bust.
Yes, Don, you weren't here for a lot of my digs at Big Ben, and last week was, of course, no exception. When I said that, considering that he had the bad pecs, and we know that's hard to throw, that they should have set him last week and given uh, Haskins a shot. I mean, it was the Cincinnati Bengals, and up until last week, I thought that they were the doormat of the division. I have since kind of changed my expectations. I have went from a 9-8 season for the Steelers to possibly a 4-13. Was it 4-13 season? But like I said, I got a lot of personal prejudices in here, and a lot of it has to do with Big Ben. So Don, Bad Pecs throws 58 times in the second home loss to the Bengals in almost 2 decades.
Yep.
2 decades. Let me think about it. Only 2 losses in the last 18 years at home to the Bengals. Okay. And then you have a Bengals player that says that the Steelers actually gave up the last drive. I think there was 3 consecutive drop passes. So my feeling here, Don, is that by the Steelers front office insisting on bringing Big Ben back this year, they have also put Mike Tomlin's job in jeopardy. What's your thoughts on that, Don, if we end up with a 4-13 season?
Well, I don't know how much the decision Tomlin has as far as, what his input is, but I know a lot of people are thinking that Tomlin is just going to ride with Ben until, it's ride or die, that type of thing. I don't know if it's that. I think maybe that's coming from up above. I don't think Tomlin is all that big of a Big Ben fan, but I could be wrong. But, we've been talking about Matt Stafford. Imagine Matt Stafford in the Pittsburgh uniform.
Oh,
hey, yes.
That will cure your erectile dysfunction there, James.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. Yeah. I would be much. I would probably be singing the praises of Matt Stafford.
Yeah, but yeah, Pittsburgh's they're in a bad situation right now, because they rebuilt in so many areas, except quarterback. I mean, so like I said, Big Ben's gonna, he was the once the flower of the franchise. Now he might be the weed of the franchise.
Yeah, he went from the hero to Pepe Le Pew. I guess that's Don, we probably know who Pepe Le Pew is, but
I do.
Some of our audience might not. But
well,
come on, Bill, give us the skinny here, Bill.
Pepe Le Pew got canceled. You know that, right?
Yeah, I know. Come on, Bill. Give us.
So remember when Aaron Rodgers, was like commentary without he said RELLEX. Okay, so here's the R word that I have for Steelers fans: REBUILD. This team is on its way to a rebuild. Now, they do have some pieces they can build around, right? TJ Watt, right? They have some pieces. Trent John Watt is a rare talent. Their offensive line, mess, but they have a talented bunch of wide receivers. They have a talented running back. They have a stuffed and mounted quarterback who passed away last year and no one wants to admit it. They need to rejuvenate their secondary. Joe Hayden is getting close to the end. Minka Fitzpatrick had 1.5 amazing seasons and I don't know what's going on. I don't know if he's not 100% healthy or what, but has not played well this year. I can't remember the other safety's name, but he struggled as well. I'm thinking that they should be in the draft looking at offensive line, right? They should be looking at defensive line, the interior of the defensive line, and then, yes, obviously quarterback. I mean, quarterback is job one. But once they're not done. I mean, they have other places on the team that need help. Like I said, I'm not wild about the secondary play. I would like to be able to also get some more interior pressure. They still never fully replaced a guy like Casey Hampton, really. And that was speaking of Texas, and that was a long time ago. So yeah, what I'm saying, all that to say
I
is,
don't think I had that much grade then.
yeah, I'm saying all that to say that this team is in rebuilding mode, and they haven't rebuilt in a long time, James. It's hard to keep patching it together, right? We saw how New England was able to do it, at least in part because their quarterback kept signing team-friendly deals, but was able to keep patching it together. But it's hard. You can't do it forever. At some point, the bill comes due. Well, the bill's coming due right now for the Steelers, and they're going to have to pay it. Time to go 5-13. Now you're going to be, further up in the draft than you've been in a long time. It's draft season. Start scouting.
Does Mike Tomlin keep his job at 4-13?
Come on. I mean, you're talking like one of those people who doesn't understand how the Steelers work.
I understand how the Steelers work, but I also understand the same things that happened to Terry Bradshaw when he left, as far as what happened to.
Well, what happened to Terry Bradshaw was
I'm talking about who was there before Cower. What's his name? Come on.
Well, before Cower was Chuck Noll.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, how Chuck Noll was when Terry was on his way out, despite the fact of Chuck Noll being a Hall of Fame coach, he still bore the brunt of the criticism when Terry had to leave.
He did. Yeah. So Terry Bradshaw had a bad elbow. He thought it would magically get better over the offseason. Came back, threw a few passes, and it still hurts, and then retired all of a sudden. I mean, that's fine. I mean, these things happen, but the fact is that they built an extraordinary talent base, right? Between the years of 1969 and 1974, they had a run of talent acquisition through the draft that will never be equal, ever. It will never happen again. It can't, right? The salary cap keeps you from keeping all that talent, even if you've somehow managed to amass it. It was a sui generis, lightning in a bottle, one time only event. And it didn't matter if you had Lombardi or Noel or Bill Walsh or whatever. When those guys got old and they replaced very few of them successfully, you couldn't continue to win. That's math or whatever. I mean, when your guys get old and the guys who replace them aren't as good, you're not going to win.
Yeah, that's just simple logic also.
Logic. That's what that is. Yes.
Don, I'm going to talk about another one of your favorite guys here, because it seems now that Richard Sherman has also bought a ticket to Tom Brady's, what's better than a Super Bowl ring rehab. So now he's joined the Bucks. What do you think about all these guys? How big is Tom Brady's house? I mean, Antonio Brown. Yeah, I mean, what's up with the? Is Tom? Should he apply for a rehab license? What's up there?
Well, Tom Brady kind of reminds me of LeBron. LeBron likes to surround himself with his chosen. I think Tom Brady has that kind of in him too. He's like, yeah, come on over. I'll talk to the GM. I'll talk to the coach. We'll make it happen, and
we'll win Super Bowl rings, and all will be forgiven. I mean,
now I don't know how many good years Richard Sherman has left in him. Of course, I've been saying about Brady for the last 5 years, so I don't know. But playing DB and playing QB are two different animals. But hey, if it works for Tampa Bay, so be it.
I mean, it's not like Richard Sherman's chopped liver. He already has his own Super Bowl ring, of course, Bill. I mean, but having a veteran when you're suffering some of the glaring holes in your defense that Tampa Bay has been showing these last couple of weeks. But isn't it interesting? I mean, should Tom Brady apply for a license there, Bill, or is there such an amateur rehab? I mean, is it like Don says, hey, come on down. We'll win Super Bowl rings, have some beers, throw the trophy around, hope it doesn't fall in the water. I mean, what's up? I mean, have we seen this Tom Brady before, Bill?
Well, I mean, he's always been there, but he was suppressed earlier in his career, as we know. The Patriot way is you show no personality, right? I mean, you do as much as possible to be as dull as possible and to say as little as possible and do nothing that draws attention to yourself. That's the Patriot way. So he's always been this guy. It's just now he's unfettered, unshackled, and been set loose. So at the next meeting of the RCA, Ring Chasers Anonymous, Tom's going to see who else is out there that's on the back end of their career but might have a little bit left in them and say, hey, who else wants one more ride, one more chance in the ring? I mean, that's really what this team is about. Now, the downside is, once again, remember I said about the bill coming due? This team's going to be in cap Hades very soon. But it won't matter, right? They will have won a ring or two or whatever, and when it all blows up, they'll just be okay with it. Okay, well, it all blows up. We'll just have to get a whole bunch of new players. But
it's Tampa Bay. It's not like you're used to doing that well anyway. I mean, you just go back to business as usual.
Right. That's the point I'm making. That if someone says, if we got you a couple of rings, would you be okay with us going back to being terrible right afterwards? It'd be like, where do I sign, right? Why are we still talking? You had me at rings. So that's essentially what you're about to see. You're about to see this team be competitive for another year, maybe even two, and then right, ground zero, and have to completely reboot and restart with a whole different everything. They'll be, I mean, Antoine Winfield Jr. will still be there. They'll still have Devin White and maybe even Levante David. I have to see where he is in his contract status, but they're going to have a handful of players that are young enough or cheap enough that they can hold on to them. But a whole bunch of those guys, they're going to probably – Mike Evans will probably be a cap casualty. Fournette is definitely going to be gone, in another year or so. I mean, the team isn't built to last anyway, right? That's not a team that they built around a 44-year-old quarterback, so they weren't thinking long-term anyway. Well, I guess he was 43 when they got him, but their plan was to win a lot in a very short amount of time, and then
Bill, I've asked this question many times because it seems like, this guy here has more lives than anyone. I know cats that, don't have this many lives, but
yep.
Bill, is Josh Gordon really that good?
Well, we don't know. He was at one point.
I mean, he keeps getting jobs. He keeps getting employed.
Yes.
When we have guys that are arguably just as good that haven't been out as long.
Right, but he's played as many as 14 games once in 8 years. So we don't know. Nobody knows. He's played 14 games, as many as 14 games once in 8 years. So nobody knows. Here's the good news. He's going to a team where all they need for him to do is be 2 years older than Sammy Watkins. Because that's basically what we're talking about. And Sammy Watkins was their size. They had a lot of speedy guys, but they were little speedy guys. But Josh is 6'2 3/4 and 221 pounds. And in his prime was running in the 4.3s. Now, once again, that was a long time. Well, I say a long time ago. He's 30 years old. And, so at 21, he was one of the fastest receivers in the league, despite being a big guy. I mean, I would like to remind you that in 14 games, because even in his rookie year, he didn't play all 16, he still managed to tie or break something like 7 different rookie receiving records, including one that was held by Randy Moss. So at one point, he was really, really good, James, but that was a long time ago.
8 years ago. That was
Yes.
8 years.
Yes, that was the point I was making.
I mean,
So when you say, is he that good? The actual right answer is no one knows. We haven't seen him play in a really long time.
Don, I mean, I haven't heard him tonight, but I know he's around the house. Where is he? I haven't heard him bark one time tonight. Usually he barks at least once.
Oh, Ranger?
Yes, I mean,
Ranger's in bed.
Oh well. I guess that's appropriate. So Don, in 8 years, who has the most talent, Ranger or Josh Gordon?
Well, depends on what the talent is. I mean, Ranger can run down a tennis ball. He runs probably about a 3.4 40. But football he's not so good at. I think Josh Gordon catches a better football than Ranger, but Ranger has a tennis ball down. But Josh Gordon, a lot of people don't realize that he went to Baylor, and he went to Baylor during a very tumultuous time for that school, as you know. And one reason he went to Baylor is because he was on probation in high school, and he couldn't really leave the state of Texas, and he went to Baylor because it made his supervision for probation a lot easier. A lot of people don't realize that, but that's and he's been in trouble
since 15 or something like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's always something with him. So he's one of these guys that if you ever got his head on straight, the world's limit. But he's just not built right for some reason. I don't get it. But tremendous talent.
Well, I mean, he has a disease. I mean, he's an addiction is a disease, and he's been addicted, to one substance or another since his mid-teens.
Yeah. I mean, but at some point, if people are still willing to pay you rather than, I mean, I don't understand how you keep getting so many chances when you haven't really, shown that you still have that talent. I mean, you haven't been on the field. How do we, like you say, how do we know? But every time there's an opening, we need a guy to catch 1 or 2 passes. There's Josh Gordon, maybe it's maybe he has something with Victoria's Secrets or something. I mean, I have no idea how this man can keep getting back in the league. But
no, it's this simple, James. So I remember this great quote from an NFL scout several years ago where he said, if Hannibal Lecter was 6'3", 220 plus pounds, and could run 4.3, we would say he had an eating disorder.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Right. So when you're talking about a guy who weighed in right at 224 pounds and just about almost dead on 6'3", right, at his pro day, and is running 36-inch vert and a 10+ foot broad jump, and I mean he's a rare specimen, right? That's what it all comes down to. There aren't many guys like him. I mean, Mike Evans, right? I mean, and obviously, you've got Megatron at the top of the food chain, and
not only that, but you have to, like you said, this is a business, and he comes with a relatively cheap price tag. So, hey.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, now you can get him for right around veteran minimum, but
yeah.
Yeah, because he's got the scratch and dent sale. Yes.
Yeah. Don, hey man, glad. We always stay on long enough for you to join. We've never, in all these years, we haven't quit at 8 o'clock, so no need thinking that we'll do it now. But Don, hey, as always, glad to get you in here, man. We were talking a little baseball earlier.
No.
Every time we talk baseball, I never can get a show where you and Demetrius can get in and talk a little baseball. So, but yeah, we talked a little baseball. Don, do you think that we're going to have a 50 home run hitter this year? It's only a couple more games left. We got a couple guys at what 48, 47. Are we going to have a 50 home run hitter this year?
I think we will. We're counting postseason too, right?
Yeah. Well, almost. Couple. No. We're just counting regular season.
No.
Yeah, I don't think if we're getting postseason, I would have said yes, but
No.
It's going to come down to the wire, so we'll see.
I asked Bill, do you think we're going to have a couple heartbreaks at 49?
yeah, which I mean that's incredibly frustrating when you end up your season with 49.
What do you think, Don? We're going to have a couple guys sitting there at 49.
It's possible. It's possible.
And I got to ask you, I'm going to go through this. We were talking about the National League West, and you have two teams in there that both have won over 100 games. The Giants 104, the Dodgers 102. Don, who's your Huckleberry?
Oh man, in National League West, I would, I have to go to the Giants.
Bill picked the Dodgers. Go ahead, come on, Don, bring it in.
Well, that's
here.
good. I mean, we don't want everybody to agree.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Come on in here, Don. We don't have no Demetrius tonight. Come on in here, Don. You're picking the Giants because.
Well, the Dodgers have been, a mainstay for so long, and for some reason, I just think that the Giants might have a little bit more hunger for it. I'm not sure what their face-to-face record is this year, but I think San Francisco has an edge on them. Correct?
They have the better. You're right. They have the better head-to-head one.
Yeah, they do it. Yeah.
So, sometimes that carries over, in postseason. But I just I'm feeling the Giants right now.
Okay. Don, as always, man, good having you here. Give us your final thoughts, my man, and hopefully we can get you back next week.
Yeah, final thoughts. So, my high school, we're 3 seconds away from being undefeated. We lost a couple of weeks ago on the last play in the Hail Mary. Quarterback from Floresville, the transfer from St. John's Bosco, California.
Oh, wow.
Hell of a game. Yeah. I'm actually 2 weeks ago, I was in Laredo. I'm sorry, Del Rio. Going to Laredo tomorrow. So I was in Del Rio. I saw these helicopters flying over the bridge. I don't know what's going on in Del Rio. I'm sure something. But I kid. But final thoughts. One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, Justin Tucker, hits a 66-yard field goal, sets a new record, former Longhorn. You may not remember, but the last time we played A&M, he won it on the last play, last second field goal. I think it was 42-yarder, beat A&M the final game until we joined the SEC. So he kicked it against Detroit. And Detroit is coached by a former Aggie, Dan Campbell, played tight end. So Justin Tucker is what we call the Aggie Slayer. We like that in Texas. My final thoughts, good job, Justin Tucker. Keep it up. You're the greatest kicker in the history of the league, and we're proud of you.
The Bengals ended up pulling the game off 24-21. So I guess that's some compensation for the Steelers. But still dagger in the heart. Bill, your final thoughts for the evening, my man.
So my final thoughts of the evening is that on this day in 1927, George Herman, Babe Ruth, hit his 60th home run off Tom Zachary in the 8th inning of the New York Yankees win over the Washington Senators in Yankee Stadium. And we were talking about getting to 50, which is incredibly hard. And this was done by a person who started his career, as we talked about earlier, as a pitcher and did not have all the benefits of, I think it'd be fair to say, of nutrition and exercise technology that players now have. But didn't
he win Mr. USA his batting career? I thought I remember seeing him, pull up his belly as he was going.
Yeah, he was right. His body was not exactly like, if you look at guys like Bryce Harper, or all these guys look literally like defensive ends or tight ends. Giancarlo Stanton looks like he could easily, give you a few reps at wide 9 D end, right? And as we mentioned earlier, Aaron Judge was being highly recruited by Stanford, Michigan, and lots of other schools to play tight end. And Babe Ruth was not built like that. He did not look like a guy who was going to play, any position probably. But if you were going to play a position in football, it probably would have been like interior offensive line or something, maybe, except for those little spindly legs. But I think we forget sometimes how insanely good he was and how he did it at a time when the game was just changing, because when he enters the league, the dead ball era has only been over for a couple of years. 18 home runs earn you nicknames like Home Run Baker, right? If you're hitting, in the mid-teens, people are like a gawk at your power, right? And we talked about Ohtani, and as Darius and I laid out, it's fun, but it's inaccurate. No one has done anything close to what Ruth was doing. Ohtani has a chance to be a really good player, but it's not a fair comparison. Ruth was not only great, but he was great of such a magnitude that he changed baseball forever. He was the first one to make home run hitting the goal, right? Like hitters hit home runs before him, and they certainly like to hit home runs, right? They would, get excited about it and everything, even in the even in the 1800s and early 1900s. Yeah, cool, I hit a home run, woo! But the idea that you would change the way you played to try to hit more home runs was something that people didn't do. And Babe Ruth made it the biggest part of the game, which it had not been. Homers were not the biggest part of baseball prior to George Herman Babe Ruth. They were just a part of baseball. They were probably about as big a part of baseball as triples are now, right? Quick, who's leading the league in triples? I bet each one of you $10 you don't know, right? Because who cares about triples? That's what home runs used to be like, believe it or not, at one point. It used to be cooler to be Sam Crawford, who was leading the league in triples, than the guy who was leading the league in home runs at one point. And Babe changed all of that, right? And so the idea that a reasonably serious baseball fan wouldn't know who was leading the league in home runs happened because of Babe Ruth. That's how it became the most important or the coolest or the most discussed thing in baseball, because it hadn't been before. Had not. It's impossible to explain to people who didn't live 100 years ago how completely he turned everything on its head, changed everything. So the guys who had retired before him or were retiring when he first entered the league, who were considered big-time home runners, would have 120, 140 career home runs, and people were like, yeah, that guy's a hitter. That guy's got power. And Babe Ruth would do that in 3 years. He changed everything about the game, made the game more popular. He was the first $100,000 man, right? And when people said, you know, you're getting paid more than the president, he famously said, well, I had a better year. So congratulations to the late, great George Herman Babe Ruth for having not just a career that, you know, was extraordinary, but one that, like I said, quite literally completely changed the game in a way that it's never gone back to what it was before.
All right, guys. Well, hey, as always, great Thursday night. Looking forward to talking to everybody next week. Thank you, Don. Thanks, Bill. Thank our audience. And, hey, we'll see you right here on the Sports Crib again next week.
Yep.
You good this weekend?